Hi everyone, this is Hal Krosman with ScreenwritingU, and today I want to welcome you to the analysis of The Americans. Now, this is actually pretty exciting. This is a show that, as you can see on your handout there's a lot of different media organizations that believe this is one of the greatest TV dramas of the decade. It was listed when we looked at all the top 20 shows, top 10 shows, top 50 shows. It was listed in every one that we saw. And people seem to love this show. But whether you love it or not, I got to tell you, there's so much to learn from analyzing it. And this is one of the things we've been doing for the binge-worthy TV class. We've been analyzing the top 1% shows to see what happens with them. What is it that causes them to be so amazing? This, by the way, is a mystery worth solving. But let me just tell you a quick story about The Americans on this. About 3 weeks ago, I told a friend of mine that I was, going to be doing an analysis of The Americans, and she said, "Oh, I've never heard of that show." So I gave her like a 2-sentence pitch on it, and didn't think about it anymore. She called me up 2 days ago and said she has watched all 6 seasons in the last 3 weeks. She said she works a full-time job. She said every hour that she was awake and not working, she was watching this show. Now, if you look at that, that's what I would call an obsessive experience, right? It's like there's something about this show that caused that. And really, if you get down to it, that's what we as writers want to be able to create in our TV shows. We want to be able to create the level of obsession that people get excited about, that they can't stop watching, that they want to do everything they can to tell all their friends that they have to watch it, that they post on all the social networks, "Oh my God, you've got to see this show," right? That's what we need to be able to accomplish. So that's what this program, by the way, is about. The ultimate program we're going to be talking about, the TV Writer Boot Camp on the binge-worthy TV shows. But let me just say one more thing having to do about The Americans before we kind of launch into this. After I'd watched all 6 seasons, I stood back and I looked at it and I went, wow, you know what the amazing thing is here? This show, and this is the big mystery that's listed there, it says, how do they have Americans, and please write in these words, how do they have Americans rooting for Russian spies? If you just stop right there, how do they have Americans rooting for Russian spies? Because that's what happens if you watch this show. Somewhere along the way, you forget that they're Russian spies, and it's like, wow, you really want them to succeed. But it's not just that. It's how do they have Americans rooting for Russian spies who are killing Americans in many of the episodes? Now, if you get the gravity of that, that's one of the things that to me says this is one of the best television shows there is. And there's a lot of them. When we were going through this whole process, we analyzed I don't know how many shows, but we ultimately brought it down to the 12 that we felt were all top 1% TV shows. As in, they really were delivering at the top 1%. They had been considered the top 1%. People were raving about them that way. The media is saying they're the top 1%, right? But they all kind of had this in them, and if you can understand that on a deep level, if you can understand how they get Americans rooting for Russian spies who are killing Americans, if you can get that on a deep level, not if you can just kind of like lightly talk about it, but if you can understand it at a level at which you could write that way, then you'll be able to do almost anything in this TV industry. So that, to me, is the big mystery that we need to solve, that you need to solve, that I need to solve, that everybody else needs to solve. We've been working on it for over a year. We have a development team. We have two different development teams that have been meeting every single week, analyzing shows every single week, discussing this, trying to understand exactly what causes these shows to be so addicting, so create so much obsession, and create so much buzz. So here's what we're going to do today. First, I'm going to kind of go over the 5-star model for creating binge-worthy TV. This is our base model, and I want to go over that because that's what I'm going to use to analyze The Americans today. Then we'll do the analysis of The Americans, and then I'll give you a quick explanation of the upcoming class that if you want to really master television and you want to be able to write in a way that actually is the future of TV, especially with the streaming platforms, you'll want to at least take a look at. So let's go to the model first. If you can turn to the next page. So you'll see a star there. It says binge-worthy TV shows. We'll just go through these. Number 1, right at the very top. Please put the words big picture hooks. Big picture hooks. So what this means is that your show's got a concept that instantly grabs us, right? That like when I pitched it to my friend, basically all I did was say the concept of The Americans, and it caused her to want to watch it, right? It's got a unique world that we're going to continue to explore and discover new things about. It's got an engaging journey that we're compelled to go on with those characters. Number 2, over to the left-hand side, put the words intriguing character. And let me say the most important part on this. There is more hidden beneath the surface than there is on the surface. And really this, even though I'm talking about character here, this really fits for everything you're doing. I had a friend who pitched me a project the other day, and he got to the end, and I was like, okay, cool. So there's something underneath this that you're not telling me, right? And he goes, like what? And I said, there's another layer underneath this, right? There's something beneath the surface. And he says, no, I just told you it. And it was like, oh, what he had just told me was what I considered to be the surface. And he thought that was all there was to his show. And so I said, no, I can feel it. There's another layer beneath that. There's something deeper. And we spent the next 5 minutes talking about it, and we came up with something underneath the surface that was completely unique, that we'd never seen on television before. It was like, oh my God, that makes it. So now his pitch is, he says the regular pitch that he said to me, and then he says, and then you discover that blah, blah, blah is going on under the surface, and it instantly lights people up, right? So one of the big things about this whole thing is that there's more under the surface than on the surface. If most of your characters, most of your plot, most of your story is pretty much on the surface, you know what? That's old TV. That's not going to work for this. So this could be things like there's secrets, there's intrigue, they have moral issues going on, there's unpredictability, and as you and I watching a show become more and more intimate with those characters, we are, surprised and excited or even upset as these new things, these new layers of who they are start to be revealed. Number 3. Please put the words empathy/distress. Empathy/distress. Now, this isn't going to sound like much in the beginning. I'm going to tell you it's everything. This is so incredibly important. It barely shows up in a lot of the old shows, but the new ones, the ones that are runaway hits right now, that people are talking about like crazy, that people are obsessed about, they are constantly putting their characters in situations that are distressful to the audience. And because of that, it creates a deeper empathy. Once you understand this part of the model, you can almost throw out the whole thing about likability. You know, I have people that tell me all the time, my supporting characters are more interesting than my lead characters. And it's like, the reason why is because they're focused almost entirely on likability, and they've put so many restrictions on these lead characters, right? They can only be nice. Well, once you understand empathy distress in a big way, you know what? You don't have to make those characters nice. Your lead characters could actually be really despicable people, and you could do this in a way that actually causes us to fall in love with them and want to go on the journey with them. It's incredibly important. Let's go on. Number 4. Now we're talking about layers. And, you know, you need multiple layers to your show. And you need multiple layers to your characters. But, you know, we're talking about layers that are for characters. We discover new histories. We discover, and not just backstory. We discover things that we go, oh my God, kind of things, right? Or we go, oh no, I knew it. I knew they were that way, right? It's like it's going to provoke an emotion. That's critically important on these layers. You know, we need to be seeing that kind of thing with the characters, with the with the plot. We need to discover layers that changes the meaning of everything we've just seen. You know, and once you can do that, essentially what we're doing is the show becomes this. It becomes a major exploration into the unknown, right? We know our characters, we know what's going on, and it keeps surprising us. So you don't even have to create intrigue about where it's going. It's going to be built in after a few episodes. Right? But don't worry, you're gonna create that from the very beginning anyway. Number 5, then, put the words inviting obsession. Inviting obsession. And this, you know, before people were actually binge watching, you know, before we had the kind of TV that we have right now, if I would have said this maybe 10 years ago, people would have gone, oh, my God, I can't do that. I can't make people obsessed. It's like, you know what? First, you don't have a choice anymore. If you're trying to actually have your show succeed, you need to create a situation that obsesses people. You really, really, truly do. It's like if you just look at this, Netflix, like I think I said earlier, Netflix bought 700 new shows this year. Right, they're stockpiling these. They're building more and more and more and more shows, and they're starting to delete shows that the industry is calling the invisible shows. And the invisible shows is about the bottom 50% that no one even knows about. If you go on Netflix sometime and start looking through all the shows that they have, once you get past all the ones that you know, and then you get past some of the ones that you go, I think I've heard of that, and then you get past the ones where I've seen that actor someplace, right? Then there's all these other shows that Netflix had bought at some point in their early days that nobody's seen and nobody's looking at. And they're starting to delete those. In the meantime, they're also starting to raise their standards so that they are no longer looking for shows that aren't going to create obsession. They need that. Their business depends on it. They have created a model where almost all of their success depends upon people constantly watching binge-worthy shows. Right? So this thing about obsession is going to become more and more and more important, and this means you need to be able to build in mysteries that people are willing to spend entire seasons trying to figure out. You need to be able to create deep questions that can only be answered in the future of the show. You need the kind of unpredictability that we've been talking about up to this point. But there's about 25 other things that you need. And again, this is, we've designed this model. We've spent a lot of time on it to make sure that it really does meet the level of quality that we're talking about. Let's do this. Let's jump over to the next page and let's talk about, or actually, stay on this page. Stay on the page with the star, and let's talk about the Americans. This is the Americans. Essentially, it's a spy drama, right? As we said, it's widely regarded as one of the greatest TV shows of this century, and there's reasons. I at one point I watched the first episode and I thought, okay, well that's kind of interesting. I don't know. And then what I noticed was other people would mention it, and I'd go, yeah, it was interesting. I just, and so I went back and I watched the first episode again, and then I watched the second, and I got hooked. And it was like from that point on, I'm engaged in that show. And I think a lot of other people have that experience. Otherwise, these media sources wouldn't be saying this is one of the top shows ever, kind of thing. It was created by Joe Weisberg, who is a former CIA officer. And there's a whole story around how it was created that's really, really interesting, but we want to get into the analysis. It was produced by DreamWorks and Amblin TV. You can watch it on Amazon Prime or iTunes right now. So, and the show went for 6 seasons. So let's kind of go through it. I'm going to give you about 1/3 of the analysis, because in order to talk about the other 2/3, we would have to start talking about some of the more advanced techniques that I haven't talked about here today. But I'll give you about 1/3 of the analysis today, and then the other 2/3 I'll tell you how to get at the end of the call. So let's start with big picture hooks. The high concept of this show. 2 KGB spies pose as a down-to-earth American family while infiltrating the FBI and disrupting Ronald Reagan's government. Right? This was at the height of the Cold War. It was at the point at which Reagan had declared he had actually signed a secret executive order declaring war on these secret Russian spies inside the U.S. So, the timing was perfect. What I think is most amazing about this, I'll say the same thing, this is another big picture hook, is that it gets Americans rooting for Russian spies who kill Americans. Pretty wild. You can see it, and by the way, you can see it from the very opening scene. Notice this. They didn't spend a lot of time on backstory. They didn't spend a lot of time telling you other stuff. This is a spy story and a family story combined, right? So the opening was full-on spy. They're kidnapping another spy who has defected. First, we don't know who they are, by the way. We think these people, they say they're immigration. They take down this spy, shove him in the car. All of this stuff goes on. We still think that they're Americans doing the right thing until they get back to their garage, and then we find out, these are Russians who have just kidnapped another Russian who was defecting. Right? Now they take 3 steps into the kitchen, and suddenly they become completely different people. And now they're talking with their family. They're worried about, whether their kids got their homework done, whether they're taking the right stuff to school. They're putting things in their lunchbox, everything else. They're a very empathetic, caring family. It was like inside of 3 steps, we went from killer spies, right, to family people who are, everyday, average type of Americans. Very, very interesting. From an intriguing character perspective, take a look at the roles they designed for actors. And this is critically important. You are not just writing for your audience. You're also writing to get this show made, right? So they did this. Look at the roles. You go to these 2 actors and you say, hey, here's what you're going to have a chance to do. You get to be spies, right? You get to be killers. You get to have a wonderful emotional family life at the same time. You get all kinds of action. There's plenty of sex. They may or may not like that. I don't know. There's constant high stakes. You're going to have ironic needs going on inside you, right? You're going to get to portray two different emotions in the same sentence. You're going to have all kinds of extreme situations, multiple layers of subtext built into your character. You're going to be forced to make gut-wrenching decisions. Now, I've interviewed a lot of actors. I've interviewed a lot of actors' production companies. And I can tell you, when you're talking about someone who is really skilled and they know what they're doing, and they're trying to move their career forward, this is the kind of role they want. They want a role that's going to show their range, that's going to deliver, that's going to have them deliver multiple emotions in 2 or 3 moments. And anyone inside the industry that watches it says, wow, incredible acting, right? So this gives them a chance to stretch. It gives them a chance to try new things. It gives them a chance to have fun. They get to live these roles, and they get to show off how good they are. So, and they really were quite amazing. So on top of that, and this is, again, talking about intriguing character, if you look at the relationships they have, they're incredibly interesting. Let me just talk about Philip and Elizabeth. First, they have an arranged marriage, right? That is their cover. So the whole purpose of the marriage is their cover. And even though they are married, they are having sex with other people because it's part of the job, right? So they're having to deal with those kinds of things, and they actually deal with it really well. On top of that, they have this family that are their children that, if you look at it, Philip believes in the family. Elizabeth thinks of the family mainly as her cover. So those kids, even though they came from her, they're part of her cover. She's maintaining her cover. She is doing what a good KGB officer would do, right? So what this does is it sets up all kinds of relationship hooks, and this is something you want to learn this term. You want to get good at it, because the truth is relationships, once you get in a TV show like this, relationships are just as important as characters. Right? We start to look for those relationships. We start to wonder about them. Right? These two, Philip is in love with her. She doesn't think she's in love with him. At one point, even in the first episode, he starts kissing her neck, and she tells him to stop, and he keeps going. She spins to hit him or to cut him with a knife, and he stops the knife, and he says, "You're my wife," and she says, "Am I really?" and walks off, right? She doesn't think this is real. But somewhere in the midst of this, they start to experience a love story. So we've got all these different hooks that are built around first are they going to be found out, but are they going to have a love story? Are they going to be able to be together for real? And the show does a great job of keeping us on edge having to do with that. These characters also have some serious dilemmas, by the way. Who do they protect? Are they protecting Mother Russia or their husband or wife? Are they protecting their family, their friends, or are they waiting for the moment when they're going to be given the instruction to kill them? Right? It's some pretty serious stuff, and you'll see if you watch multiple episodes, you will see times where they're having to make this kind of decision. They're having to make a decision about whether or not they kill somebody who's somebody they care about, and it's because it's been instructed from, quote, the center in Russia. We have some serious complex relationship webs also. If you look, Elizabeth and Philip and Claudia, their hardcore handler. They have all kinds of problems in the midst of those relationships. We have Philip and Stan and Martha. And if you're watching the first episode, you're seeing that Martha in the beginning is this person that Philip goes over. He presents himself as a CIA operative. He needs to interview her to make sure that everything is going right inside the FBI. And so there's a logical reason given. He's got a great cover. It's really interesting to watch. He's gathering information as he goes. Along the way, she falls in love with him. And in order to make sure that she does, she plants some stuff, some listening devices. He chooses to marry her. So now he's married to Elizabeth, but he's also under an assumed identity married to Martha, who is working 8 feet from the director of the counterintelligence part of the FBI. Really interesting situation. Stan doesn't know he's married to Martha. He doesn't know that. Stan's across the street. He's also an FBI agent who works in that office. That triangle right there, sooner or later it's going to come apart, right? So this kind of stuff's pretty important. Let's go to empathy distress. If, there's a difference. There's, like if you're watching Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible, what you really see there is you see a whole bunch of spies who are having fun doing what they're doing, and they're even saying things like, if you watch the last one that came out, they're even saying things like, somebody says, how are we going to disarm the bomb? And Tom Cruise looks at him and smiles and says, we'll figure it out when we get there. And it's like they have this game going and it's fun and everything else. This show isn't that. This show isn't a bunch of high testosterone guys trying to challenge each other on the edge of death, ha ha ha, and that kind of thing. This show, really, if you get down to it, Philip and Elizabeth are pretty much deeply troubled by what they do, right? Killing is part of the job, and sometimes they feel guilt about it, sometimes they feel rage about it, sometimes they feel hopelessness about it. They love, they hate, they feel jealous, they feel tricked, they feel betrayed. All kinds of emotions are coming in here, and it's all because of the way empathy and distress are designed into this. They are constantly put in danger. Their missions often go wrong. Right? If you got to watch how this goes. It's like we don't have the thing where Tom Cruise always wins. In this case, more than half of their missions go wrong, and there's a reason why, right? And it's like it engages you deeply. Philip forms a friendship with the neighbor across the street, but the neighbor continues to be suspicious. He breaks into their garage, searches their car, right? At one point, Philip's on the edge of killing him in the midst of that, and then he finally leaves. They've got a contentious relationship with their handler. In fact, she has them tortured to find out what kind of information that they will give up. And when Elizabeth finds out about that, Elizabeth jumps on top of her and beats the living shit out of her. So now these two are on the edge of killing each other from that point on. They have defectors within their ranks, right? They could be busted at any moment. It's like this is a very different kind of show, again, than, say, the Mission Impossible kinds of things. On top of that, their entire life is everything they do is more complicated because they're spies, right? Running their business, they keep running into situations that could create problems for that business, could expose them as spies. Even having a relationship, having kids, who knows what their kids are going to say or find out or worry about, and that kind of thing. If we go down to layers, there are multiple layers that are exposed in this program that are revealed as we go through it. But you've got to, I don't know how many of those I want to go into right now, but I can say a couple of them. First, if you look at kind of the irony of what's going on here, we've got Elizabeth in the kitchen trying to get her daughter ready, and her daughter is watching some program on TV that is discussing how much Americans hate Russians. So the daughter, who's taking Russian history right now and learning about all the bad things that Russians are doing, is telling the mom what the mom believes is propaganda. And here's the mom who this is her home country being talked about, right? And so on her end, she's got all kinds of stuff going on in that. She starts putting down the teacher and that kind of thing. But what the daughter doesn't know is that her mother is one of the worst of them. So just that. Later on, we're going to have a point at which that layer is revealed to the daughter, and that's going to shift everything from that point on. There are multiple other layers that are revealed. For just even in the early episodes, they're being tortured. And they're being beat on quite a bit, and all kinds of things are happening. They're about to kill Elizabeth in front of him, and all of a sudden at that point, this new layer is revealed, which is Claudia walks in and says, "Okay, you can stop now." And it's like, oh, so they were kidnapped and tortured for a long time. All because Claudia was a little suspicious. They're later going to find out that there's a whole other layer underneath that, which I don't think I'm going to say right now. But there's an entire other layer underneath what Claudia just did that has a very, very different meaning and actually goes opposite of everything they think they're doing. It's important that you're able to build those in. And then finally, inviting obsession. Let's just look at that for a moment. We've got constant suspense, right? That they could be caught at any second. And not only is it that they could be caught, but let's just say that they were a single spy by themselves, living in a little studio apartment, and they're caught. Okay, that's one thing. But if they're caught, and then, by the way, their children are also arrested, that's a whole different level of pain, right? So we're constantly worried about them being caught. We're constantly worried about whether or not this is going to destroy this family and what's going to happen to it, all the way up to the very last episode of the very last season. This creates both suspense and deep emotional concern at the same time. There's a complex web going on here where they're spying on the FBI. The FBI, under Ronald Reagan, has declared war on these kinds of Russian spies, the ones who are, they're called the illegals. They live in the U.S. as if they are normal people. Their next-door neighbor, obviously, or across the street, is somebody who is in the FBI counterintelligence, right? It's like, this is a pretty complex web, what's happening here. And ultimately, we're going to get into the Russian embassy, and then there's going to be another complex web built there, right? There's intrigue in almost every single scene. There's spying, there's multiple identities, disguises, there's the chance of being caught, there's secret missions going on, there are people who are defecting in the midst of that, there's hiding, lying, escaping, there's manhunts, there's surveillance happening, all these things are constantly going on. And it's not just that, it's also that then they are hiding it from their kids, they're hiding it from the minister that their daughter starts going to church because she's believing in religion. They're hiding all of that, all the while they believe something completely different than they are presenting. There's open loops all over the place. Will Stan find out? Will Elizabeth and Philip get caught? Will Paige become more suspicious? Will Claudia screw them over or maybe even kill them? Will Elizabeth die from the gunshot? Will Elizabeth and Philip have a love story? So, again, there's so much more than even what I'm talking about. For everything that we've just talked about, there are multiple ways that you can make those things happen. And this is part of why we're talking about this, is because television has changed, right? It's like it used to be okay to sit and wait a week for the next episode to come out. But more and more people are now getting to the point of saying, why am I waiting for a week? I can go on Netflix and watch the entire season, right? All the streaming platforms are creating their success and changing the industry based upon this one need. Why do we have to wait? We can see whatever we want to see whenever we want to see it. We're paying for it, right? So that has changed television, and it means you need to up your game. So that's what, just so you know, that's essentially what we've been working on. We've been working on how do we create what we're calling the future of television. And again, what we did was we picked the top 1% of TV shows, the ones that were creating the thing that Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime are all saying they need. They're creating that thing, that binge watching experience. So, what if you became really great at doing this? What if you actually mastered this particular model? Now, by the way, everything I've talked about today is just the tip of the iceberg. It really is. This is what I've given you today. Really is the first day of a 60-day program, or as actually a 60-lesson program that goes on over 6 months. And I've also given you like 1/3 of the analysis, where I'll talk with you in a minute about how you can get the other 2/3. But I want you to just ask yourself a couple of quick questions, because this stuff is really important. There's a whole series of different skills that are relatively new. Yes, they've been used before, but now they're being used times 100. So let me ask you a couple of questions. If you had to explain these, if we ask you right now, do you know how to create irony? And it's like, all right, write a scene right now and create irony. Now the question really is, do you know how to do it 10 different ways? Right? Do you know how to create intrigue 20 different ways? Do you know how to create surprising layers 10 different ways? Do you know how to create obsession all the way through your show and design it so that the entire season is designed to create obsession? Because that's really what we're talking about. The way things have changed, Netflix and all the others do not want shows that don't do this, right? So let me explain. A thing came out in the media the other day that said Netflix has identified a problem where they've noticed that some of their shows have what's called a slump in the middle of the season. And it's like, right, those are the shows, the old TV shows, that didn't have to accomplish what the new TV shows do. So I've read through the article, and it's like, yeah, okay, the slump in those seasons comes because they didn't know how to do these things at that time when they created that show, and they weren't thinking people are going to watch them all right in a row. They weren't thinking people are going to binge watch them. So what Netflix is noticing is that people are starting on some shows, and about halfway through they abandon them. And you and I have experienced that. You've probably watched some shows that you watched 3 or 4 episodes and then that you were done, right? And it's like there's a difference. What we need to do is keep them obsessed all the way through. That's critically important, and it's going to make the difference in how Netflix is choosing shows in the future. So your producers are starting to watch for this. Showrunners are starting to watch for this. And you need to be able to create the kind of show that doesn't have a slump, that there is never a moment we are not completely engaged. So if you can just take just a moment, I'd like to kind of walk you through the quick model on what we're doing, what this program is about. It'll just take a couple of minutes. And let me just tell you up front, this program has 2 guarantees, and I'll tell you those after I explain it. But they're 2 money-back guarantees. So we set it up so that you don't have to take a risk. I promise you, once you're inside this, within 3 or 4 days, you'll be saying, oh, my God, this is amazing, the stuff I'm learning. This is the best program I've ever designed. I've designed hundreds of programs. I've designed at least 40 for screenwriters. And really, I get people are texting me almost every day. I just got a text a minute ago, or right before we started this call, with somebody saying this class, they're in this class right now, saying this class has completely changed how they write. And what they mean is that their writing is at such a much higher level. So let's just go through. If you go to the next page, I'll just take you through real fast how this works. This is a 6-month class. It is done over 5 modules. Each one of them is another component of how they write inside TV rooms. When we did this, we assume that at some point you're either going to create a show that you're going to make a deal with a showrunner who then will write it inside a TV room, or you're going to get inside a TV room and you're going to be working with them. Now, this is the new thing, and it's pretty exciting. It used to be you had to be in L.A. Or New York or Vancouver, wherever the writer's room was, in order to even be part of this. Now you can actually create a show from anywhere in the world and get it to a small producer or a showrunner or something like that, who can then make a deal with Netflix or Hulu or whoever, and suddenly you've got your show happening. And at that point, then you get to decide, do you want to be part of it in a bigger way, or do you just want that created by credit and just be excited by that and move forward with your career, right? So all of this is now possible that wasn't possible before. So let me walk you through it. Module 1, the 50 most important decisions of your show. This is what most writers don't do. I'll give you how the writers' rooms do it. I'll give you how most writers do. What most writers do is they come up with an idea and they go, oh, cool idea for a series. I'll write a pilot. And they go right to writing a pilot, without figuring out what's going to sell it, without figuring out what's going to keep it on the air, without figuring out all the things we just talked about. They just go right to writing a pilot, and they write it however they write it. I've seen 30 of those pilots in the last year. Not one single one of them delivered at the level that I'm talking about. So I talk with showrunners, and I've interviewed a whole bunch of showrunners about this, and I'll say, how do you break a show in the very beginning? How do what do you do? And here's what they tell me, and this is what Module 1 is. They say they sit there as a team, and they discuss the show for a couple of weeks, and what they're looking for are what I'm calling the 50 most important decisions. They're trying to understand what's going to make this show great. They're trying to understand what's going to make these characters so compelling that people can't forget them. They're looking for all the things that we just talked about, and they're trying to understand what is it that's going to have an audience so deeply involved that they can't stop watching. All of those decisions you make before you start writing. Right? That's what they do in the writer's room, and there's a reason why. Because otherwise, anything you've written, if you're trying to change it every single time, you're up against this major barrier, an emotional barrier for you as the writer. So we're going to design those first. You bring in whatever your show idea is, and you go through this process step by step. And by the way, we're going to make it as easy as possible for you to find and discover those 50 most important decisions. Once you have those, we go into Module 2, which now is about creating your TV pitch Bible. And for this, it's like, first I looked around and I said, what kind of TV pitch Bibles are out there? And it turns out there's a whole bunch of people teaching a whole bunch of different things. And I looked at like 20 different TV pitch Bibles. They all looked completely different. So what we did instead was then I went to the showrunners and I talked with them. And then from there, then I talked with some producers. And finally, I got in touch with some of the funding sources that require TV pitch Bibles as part of the package. And one funding source took me through the entire process, exactly what they need, exactly what order they need it in, and what the criteria is for each part that they need to see. So first thing is we have the structure that's being used at the highest levels in the industry right now for a TV pitch Bible. The second thing, and this is the other thing that's missing from almost everybody's, is you need to know when you're creating a TV pitch Bible, you need to make sure that that it is intriguing from the first sentence. These can't be dull book reports. And that's mostly what I see is dull book reports. They need to be specific. They need to be clear. They need to deliver on those 50 most important decisions, and they need to intrigue. So that's what you're going to be learning here. This is really, truly next-level stuff on this. Once you have your TV pitch Bible, then we move to Module 3. Module 3 is your brilliantly complex pilot outline. Now, back to the TV rooms. I'm talking to one showrunner, and I said, so do you guys outline? And he says, everything. And I'm like, okay. How much time do you spend on outlining as compared to writing? And he says, yeah, it depends. And it depends on the writer. But he says, usually it's 2 to 1, maybe 3 to 1. They're spending 3 times as much time on the outline as they are on writing the actual episode. So I said, tell me why that is. And he said, because by the time these episodes are complex, and you guys have seen this. If you're watching any of these, it's like, wow, they're way more complex than feature films. He said, by the time we get to the point of actually writing the episode, if you've got a great outline, it's easy to write a great episode. Now, that's important to know. So we're going to go through and create the outline one step at a time. And I don't mean chronologically. I mean, we're going to build in all the things you need. Because the truth is this outline for your pilot, this is the most important episode of your entire show. If this doesn't work, the whole series doesn't get picked up. Right? So there's some really important things that need to go into that. So let's move to the next one, and I'll talk about that. Module 4, writing a mesmerizing TV pilot. Now listen, your pilot, I've had people come to me and they'll say, well, I wrote this script for a feature film. Maybe I could just use that for the pilot. And it's like, well, that sounds logical. But the 3 times that I've actually worked with somebody through that process, it's like we had to change 75% of it. And the stuff we had to change, it was painful for the writer to have to shift all of this stuff because the pilot has to do things that a feature never has to do. The pilot has to, its whole purpose is to launch us into the series. Right? Its job is to be the inciting incident for the entire series. It needs to set up a situation where by the end of that pilot, we can't even think of not seeing that next episode. Right? We have to see that next episode. And we already know, if it's done right, we already know by the end of that pilot that we're going to watch every single episode of this series. Right, over and over. Like if you think about it from a money perspective. You go to iTunes, you think, and then I do this all the time. It's like, oh, I haven't seen this series. You click to buy only the first episode so that you can decide if you're going to watch. In the last 8 weeks, especially since I'm analyzing this, I have done that 20 times during the day. Sometimes we'll watch 4 or 5 of them in a row. And I click to watch this episode, right? I pay my $2.99. If at the end of the episode I love it, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to see what's coming up next, this is after the pilot, then I click to pay the $22. If not, I move on to something else. Now think of how many times you chose not to watch the entire series just based on watching the pilot. That they calculate that. They keep an eye on that because that means money to them. Just look at it. It's the difference between $2.99 versus $22, right? That's 10 times the money. But if I end up watching the whole season, or not the whole series, it's about 100 times the money. So that pilot needs to set up this show making 100 times the money. That's the job. It needs to deliver on 5 different layers, 5 different levels that we're not seeing in feature films. There are so many things that need to happen that you need to be able to create inside that pilot. It's going to be very complex, and you know, you're going to, again, we take it step by step. But let me just say one other thing here. Once that's all clear, and that's all clear early on, you actually create all of that inside the outline. But once all that's clear inside the TV pilot in Module 4, then what we give you is this. We give you 2 different grids that essentially give you all kinds of different patterns for writing description and all kinds of different patterns for writing dialogue. This is something we've never done before. I've never seen it anyplace. We spent almost 2 months creating this. And this is what we wanted out of this. It's like, you know, normally, yes, of course, your description is going to be show, don't tell. But what we're giving you here is, where are the times that you can expand on that? Where are the times that it's accepted inside the TV industry for you to give us a little more? And by the way, how can you use your description to create even more intrigue? Right? So we've got about 20 different patterns that you can use that elevate your description significantly. Then we did the same thing having to do with dialogue. We've got, I don't know how many patterns, maybe 30 different patterns having to do with dialogue, that are all patterns that you need to be able to use that keep people engaged, that keep people wondering, right, that build in subtext, all of these things that are critically important to the success of a TV series. So your writing is automatically going to go to a much higher level because you have many more options. And they're options that the pros are using right now inside these top 1% shows. So, and then finally, in Module 5, and this is the one that will probably surprise a lot of people, marketing your binge-worthy TV show. The normal thing is people explain to writers how to market. What we're going to do is something different. During the first 15 days, we're going to help you create your TV materials, your marketing materials, right? So that you'll have your pitch down, you'll know what you're doing, and all that kind of thing. You'll also then take a look at where do you want to go? Who are the producers you want to go to? Who are the people who could possibly get you in to whatever locations you want to get and whatever streaming platforms and that kind of thing. Then in the next 15 days, we will guide the group through the process of marketing. Now, we've done this quite a few times having to do with feature films where in our master classes, and this is something that we haven't told to the public at all, but in our master classes that are so far we've only done with the alumni, we take our writers into the market for 30 days. And I guide them through the process. So this is the same thing. We're going to do it for 15 days here to get you started. But for that 15 days, you will know during this 15 days, your job is to market every day. Your job is to go out and connect with the kind of people that could help you move your career forward. You will have strong materials for that. You will have me available to answer questions all the way through that. I'm coaching the group through the process, and I'll be on the phone with you once a week during that period of time. I'm coaching the group through the process. But you'll also be able to ask questions as things happen. If you get an email from a producer who says, now what are you doing here, or ask you some kinds of questions, you simply post the question. You don't say who the producer is, but you post the question, and I'll answer it for you so you know exactly what to say to that producer, exactly how to respond to them, exactly how to interact with them. So this is one of the things I think that scares people most when it comes to marketing is, oh, my God, what if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer? What if they ask me to do something and I don't know what it is, right? Don't worry. I will walk you through every step of it. And again, I'll be available, within a 4 to 5 hour period to be able to answer any of your questions, and that gives you enough time. You can respond to them 4 or 5 hours later, and everything is totally fine. So you'll go back to them communicating like a pro. That increases the chance that it moves to the next step. When you get to the point of actually the possibility of making a deal, we will walk you through it to whatever degree we can. And if you end up with an actual deal, we can recommend an entertainment attorney that you can connect with to be able to make that happen. At minimum, what's going to happen out of this is you're going to get much more comfortable with marketing. You're going to have real experience with it. You will have started to build a network, and the job is, our purpose is to launch you into the market so that you can continue to market until you accomplish what you want to accomplish. So there's no guarantees that you're going to end up making a deal. Nobody could possibly guarantee that. But there are some other guarantees I'll tell you about in just a second. But in general, what it comes down to is, listen, if we can get you that experience and we can get you to start connecting with people and we can walk you through those early interactions, by the end of that, you're going to feel completely confident and you can do it on your own from that point on. We're not trying to make people dependent upon us. What we want to do is create a world of writers out there who are able to accomplish whatever's necessary. And by the way, the good news on this is once you've completed this program, you are also invited into our ScreenwritingU alumni, which is an incredible group of writers who work together, who are highly supportive, who believe in each other. They are coming up together. Many of them have made deals. You can go look on our site and you'll see at least 400 deals that those writers have made. It's an amazing place. And by the way, a bunch of them are in this program at the present moment, in the one that started about 2 months ago, and they're going to be leading the way in this particular area. So at that point, you'll be invited in. The alumni is free as long as you follow our professional code of conduct and our rules. You get to stay in. So, what does this come down to? It begins October 22nd, which just a little over a month from now. As soon as you sign up, we will get you the first really 2 lessons on how you create a concept, how you create a show concept, so that you can spend the next month brainstorming show ideas. So that way you come in the door with a show idea you've already picked, that you like, that you think really has a chance. Once you're inside from that point on, then you will be learning new things every single day. And this program, really, truly, I don't care what level you're at, unless you are writing TV and you're writing on some of the shows that are the very best in this industry, there's something new to learn here. And if you're somebody who's only written a couple of pilots or you haven't written any, I promise you, every single day you're going to learn something new. Every single day the quality of your writing is going to go up. And don't worry, we're going to make it easy for you. That's one of the things that we do really well, is setting it up so that the most complex things, we break them down into simple steps that you can do one step at a time and end up mastering that set of skills. Now, early into the situation, we were thinking about doing this program for around $2,000. I think it's well worth it. It's the best, as far as I know, it's the best program there is in TV at the present moment. We ultimately decided on $12.99, so that's the regular price. If you get in the next 5 days, we can give you an introductory special, and we can get you in for $850. So that saves $449 off of the regular price. So, if you're looking at this and you're thinking, wow, this is something I would like to learn based on what you heard today, I promise you, it's better than anything I presented today. What we did today was really, truly just the tip of the iceberg. Let me take you to the guarantees just so you know what they are. The first guarantee is, jump in, go through the first 3 lessons, which actually end up being about a little over a week. You end up going through the first 2 teleconferences along with it. Go through those first 3 lessons. If you don't like it for any reason at that point, just let us know. We'll give you your money back right then. No questions asked. We take really good care of our writers. And if for some reason somebody doesn't like it, it doesn't fit for whatever they're doing, that'll be totally fine. But I'll tell you, for the group that's going through it right this second, we didn't have one single person ask for that. In fact, we've got exactly the opposite. They're raving about this program. Here's the second guarantee. Go through the entire class, and as long as you post every single assignment, as in you actually did the work, you post every single assignment, if at the end of it you don't feel like you've doubled the quality of your TV writing, we'll refund your money. Because I promise you, you will more than double the quality of your TV writing, easily. Seriously, I've had people who have told me, people who have written 4 or 5 pilots, who have told me at the end of the first module, they doubled or tripled the quality of their TV writing. This will make a significant difference for you. So, if what you want is to be able to, first, if you wanted to be able to create a TV show that really does have a chance, you should consider joining us. If you want to have something that the moment any producer reads this, they go, "Oh my God, this writer's amazing," right? That's the minimum level at which we're talking here. But what you want to do is to write ahead of the market, and have something that people inside this industry could identify as possibly one of those next top 1% shows. Come and join us. That really is the possibility here. And again, I'm going to say this: anyone, whatever your level that you're at right now, even if you haven't written any TV yet, if you just follow all the instructions and you just take the steps the way we present them, which, by the way, again, we make it really, really easy. If you just take all the steps, by the time you're done with this, you're going to have a show that is really, really compelling. If you've written any TV at all, by the time we're done with this, you're going to have something you're going to look back and go, "Oh my God, this show is 10 times better than what I've written before." So that's why we created this. This program has taken the longest of any show or any class I've ever created, and it's because we analyzed it to this level of depth. So I hope that you'll get a chance to join us. I promise you it will make a significant difference in your writing and your life and your chance of being able to accomplish what you want. So with that, I want to thank you guys for being here today. This is Hal Krosman with ScreenwritingU, wishing you the very best. Bye-bye, everyone.